As women, the pressure to be beautiful seems insurmountable. But for one young lady who traveled to South Korea to teach elementary school students, that pressure nearly broke her. Last month, Ashley Perez, in a soul-crushing discovery, wrote a piece called "I Wasn't Beautiful Enough to Live in South Korea" for BuzzFeed about her time in South Korea. She joins us via Skype from the BuzzFeed office in Brooklyn today. Good afternoon to you.
Hi, how are you doing?
Thank you so much for joining us today. Also with me is writer Zara Stone. Her piece in the Atlantic about the K-pop plastic surgery obsession details the industry that has young ladies across South Korea lining up to go under the knife. Ashley, though, I do want to start with you. Talk to me about your visit to South Korea. I understand you went there to teach fourth graders English. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. I originally went to be an English teacher for the year, and I was just surprised. The reason I wrote this article was because I didn't know that this was going to be such a big part of Korean culture. And so for me, I think that's what led me to write this article, is just realizing that South Korean beauty standards are kind of evolving with the country in a shocking way. And so that's what I encountered as an English teacher.
And I understand, Ashley, that you identify yourself as Cuban, Filipina, as well as Korean. Your grandparents are from South Korea. What were you told in terms of preparation and going back to South Korea about what it might be like being an outsider?
Well, it's interesting because my grandmother, maternal grandmother, is actually the one who is Korean, but she grew up in Cuba. And so what we knew, or what I knew, was through very secondhand knowledge and through what Zara will talk about in K-pop. And so I was getting conflicting pictures of what Korea looked like and what it would be like as someone who was of Korean heritage. But I think I expected a little bit more, that maybe I would fit in a little bit easier. And I think what I found was kind of the opposite, that because I was partially Korean, but not fully Korean, I fell short of these beauty standards, even though I was someone who was partially Korean.
And Zara, your article in The Atlantic was really such an eye-opener. We hear Ashley talk about being not fully Korean, but as you very well detailed, fully Korean ladies, girls, are going under the knife. What is that all about?
Well, there's a huge economic imperative in Korea, and this idea about the value that's placed on beauty stems from multiple things. As I think Ashley mentioned, that when she was there, she was getting these kind of conflicting ideals, that she was the other at the same time as trying to fit in. And in Korea, from a very young age, girls are told that they can't just be smart, they have to be beautiful as well. And this is perpetuated through education and through surgery. And both of these kind of ideas are really drilled into the young children from this early age. And they grow up to aspire to certain ideals which aren't necessarily natural, but which are perceived to be the thing that they need to look like in order to succeed.
So I'm sorry, go ahead, Kelly, go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the things I found so interesting was that even though this is in Korea, a lot of the value on beauty is very Western. And so I wonder, where do you think that influence comes from?
Well, I think when we talk about Western beauty and values in Korea, we've got to remember that worldwide, everyone places a huge emphasis on beauty. And kind of whether we're in America or England or Korea, it does tend to be valued and generally kind of aspired to by the media. Where in Korea, the kind of difficulty with the Western tone comes because some of the surgeries that people are undergoing, we've got the double eyelid, we have rhinoplasty and the V-line. Some of the features some people suggest are to make people look more Western. And whether or not this is true is one of these really big debated topics, because at the same time that double eyelids, only around 50% of people of East Asian origin have them naturally, where it tends to be a much higher percentage in the West. You could also say that being able to have surgery in itself is a sign of economic success. So when you've had surgery, you're showing people that you can afford it, which doesn't necessarily mean you're trying to be Western, but it's a really different kind of value proposition.
Yeah.
But when you look at some of the images, and we have a wall filled with, these were actually contestants from the 2013 Miss South Korea pageant. When you look at some of the images, it almost appears as though they're all going to the same surgeon. I mean, it is clear that that is definitely a particular look that they're going for. And we heard Ashley make reference to K-pop. Just briefly, tell us what K-pop is and why it's just so influential.
Okay, well, K-pop stands for Korean pop culture. Nowadays, it might be more familiar to a Western audience as Gangnam Style, but actually this has been going on for over a decade. You've got people like the Wonder Girls and Generation Girls, which are really groomed girl groups. They kind of form together from a really young age. They sing and they dance in sync, and they tend to kind of be highly sexualized at the same time with a little bit of a Lolita look. So they kind of appeal to teenagers, but they also appeal to families because they have this wholesome image. But one of the worrying things about Korean pop stars is not only does the management company control who they date, what they wear, often they control what they look like. And by this, we're talking bare bones, what they look like. Because many of these young teenage pop stars will have had a large amount of cosmetic surgery.
And Ashley, you were teaching young students. I'm curious as to whether or not at that tender age were you hearing the girls make reference or aspire to wanting to have the ability to have this kind of procedure?
Yeah, absolutely. It was interesting being an elementary school teacher and seeing these cultural values really influence younger girls. So whether it wasn't necessarily fully in reference to having surgery at that young of an age, but I would see, you know, my older 5th grade girls would be outside practicing K-pop moves that were just overly sexualized for their age. And then you would see, you know, on days when I didn't come in with makeup, my kids would come up to me and say, Ashley, teacher, you look so tired. You know, where is your makeup? There's actually a word for Korean for plain face that I had to ask my co-teacher what they were calling me, because that culture of beauty is so ingrained even from a young age. And on days where I wore a little bit more of eyeliner, or if I wore a nice dress, the students were very, very quick to comment on it. And so I think even though they weren't at the stage yet where they were, you know, really contemplating plastic surgery themselves, they were hyper aware of what beauty standards are in their country.
Ashley, did you get a sense from, say, the parents of the children, perhaps children of an older age, as to whether they saw the investment in this kind of surgical procedure as important as the investment in education, college education, and so forth?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that in Korea, it's really about having a full package, almost in the way mirroring kind of the American dream of being beautiful and having money and all of that. In Korea, it's kind of evolving to be the same type of ideal. And so I think for the older kids, for example, I had a friend who worked at a high school, and their students were handed out pamphlets about plastic surgery after school.
Wow.
And so these are high school girls who are walking out of their education that literally goes on until almost 10 p.m. and getting a pamphlet saying, you're smart, now look beautiful. And so I think in Korea, they just haven't fully caught up yet to the ramifications of what this means, because so many young girls, after they finish their big test in Korea, will actually get the double eyelid surgery or something comparable to that.
In the U.S., we finally, and we still have a tremendous way to go, but we've started to see conversations by global brands such as Dove and other beauty and lifestyle products who are embracing what natural beauty looks like and telling women it's okay to be who you are and it's great to live in the skin that you're in. Is there an opportunity for global brands with that kind of power to spread that message in Korea, or do you think it's too early for something like that to resonate?
Did you even see anything like that, any attempts like that in your reporting?
Well, I think in Korea, some of those brands are present, but they actually sell under different names. And cosmetic and beauty shops there are more common than McDonald's. Like, you walk down any street in Seoul, and every other shop is a makeup shop, and they entice you in with a variety of different free samples. And a lot of the makeup is really aimed at kind of the girl, kawaii audience, because it's cute and it has bunnies and kittens on it, and you just want to come in. And this whole kind of makeup culture, which they're pushing it to the men as well in terms of BB creams, because a lot of the cosmetics and beauty we're getting here have come from the East. So they are pushing kind of beauty really heavily. And kind of back to what she was saying about the schools, when I was visiting there, I went to a couple of high schools, and you would walk down the corridors and they would have full-length mirrors and weighing scales on every floor.
Oh my goodness.
In the schools?
In the schools.
Wow.
That is frightening. Well, listen, thank you so much, Zara, for
Amazing.
sharing your insight, and Ashley for sharing your very personal story. I have to say, in my humble opinion, I think you're beautiful.
Gorgeous.
Thank you, ladies, both. And you are watching Our Take.